do it. I think that's all I can say.
To subject all persons to the law with the Matinamidi sword.
It is not my sword, it is the sword of the law.
And the sword in fight against economic crime and graft.
It is the sword of the law.
So the sword of the law will cut, and it will cut both ways.
That is why you have the scale.
Do you share the view that the privilege of nale prosequa should be exercised by the Attorney General and not any other person as a constitutional privilege known in constitutional jurisprudence reserved for the Attorney General in many other jurisdictions? What's your view on that?
The Attorney General normally delegates the power of nale prosequa to her officers, his or her officers. So even the whole world over, the countries are so big that normally, even though theoretically they are the Attorney Generals, he or she delegates them and they are exercised on her behalf, his or her behalf. So I will not make the general statement you've made, because if the Attorney General alone is to exercise that, it means that a case in Bolgatanga, in which the Chief State Attorney sees has a problem and cannot continue, will have to wait until the docket is sent to Accra for the Attorney General to give him instructions. That is why there are normal regulations. In such a case, don't do anything until you bring it to me. But there are very few cases. So I wouldn't make the generalization. And that is why I didn't worry when there was delegation by law to the special prosecutor with even a stringent regulation as to how he could do it.
What's your appreciation of Section 4, the head note reads, mandate of the office, against Article 88, 3 and 4 of the Constitution? What's your own view? You see harmony there?
I don't think that there is disharmony. I've said that as long as the prosecution is under the authority, and I've explained that under the authority doesn't mean that the Attorney General will instruct and give directions on every prosecution, particularly when she's dealing with an independent body. And I've said that my reading of the decided cases led me to that conclusion. So I don't see, for me, I don't see a disharmony.
Thank you very much. You would be special prosecutor, and Parliament in its wisdom conferred lots of authority and powers to you. I just heard you relate to the matter with the Honorable Black. It's not that we are using this committee to get vindication, but as special prosecutor, you must hear facts or the authoritarian pattern rule. And if it takes you so long to get convinced, do you suggest that a matter, for instance, of an email, if it was the U.S., was subjected to the Federal Communications Commission investigation? Why won't you take his word for his honor that it is not him? And why must we believe that tomorrow somebody will not appear before you and you tell the person that I'm not convinced? And that's just a position you are taking.
Matter of the emails were ever to come to me, I would recuse myself because it was a problem between he and me. I would definitely recuse myself. What I'm saying is, it's not really, I don't even see it as a problem between he and I. An article is written by him and published under his name, right? And it appears under another platform, under somebody else's name. So I tried to trace it, and the information I got, right, led me to the conclusion that the person either was using, because he signed the first article, which same article appeared under a different name. So my conclusion was that the second article, he was using an alias. Then somebody comes to say, I was the one who wrote it. I'm saying, once he signed this one, where Dito was his. No, what I mean, the first publication. I don't know whether it was on Joy or something. The one on Modern Ghana was the one which came in the name of Crow. But the other one came in your own name. So I concluded that why will the same article coming on the Modern Ghana bear Crow's name? So Crow must be your alias. That's the basis of my conclusion.
No, Chairman, Modern Ghana doesn't belong to me. I don't edit Modern Ghana.
Well, it doesn't belong to me either.
You are not being fair to me. And he knows that. He's not being fair to me.
You can get another opportunity on another platform, but now is a minority leader on the floor.
If another platform, then you will guide him on this platform. He can't damage my reputation and tell me that I should go look for another platform. Mr. Chairman, please. You won't accept that, so don't do that to me.
Cash for sale.
You won't accept that.
Okay. Cash for sale.
I think, please, hold on. I think it is clear. I won't accept what? That if you don't ask a question, he will offer an answer. The question has been why he won't apologize to you. And he says, this is my reason. Should that be a basis of an exchange between you and him? He is sitting here as our witness. Please, let's respect the rules. Your leader is on the floor, and he has the floor. Please proceed.
Sammy, hold it. So, Honorable Martin Alamisikeza Amidu, you have in some of your public utterances and in some of your publications churn out vow against the National Democratic Congress, sometimes directed to some personalities. Won't you be struggling to reinforce that behavior by getting them dealt with in accordance with law? If you steady reinforcing behavior and in psychology, wouldn't you be working to find compelling reasons to justify a position you've already articulated even before you assume the office of Special Prosecutor?
I have said time without number that it's not my duty as a prosecutor could go looking for victims. The disadvantage of doing that, it appears you've read Jackson's article. It's clearly spelled out. But I want to assure you that if a member of the party commits a triable offense, I'm not going to say because I had criticized it, the office should not try it. Once the docket shows it and there's evidence, we will deal with it. I said the law will not respect persons. But I won't go out of my way looking for people. It will be unethical. Right? My conscience will not allow me. But if there is a docket built by the office which shows that there is something, and it is clear the fellow has made a statement on the docket, either admitting or denying it, and there are witnesses who can prove it, or there is documentary evidence which can support it. Just because I had made a critique doesn't mean that a constitutional critique doesn't mean that I'm heading an office, it should turn a different eye. That will not be fair for the nation, particularly if the amount involved is in the millions or thousands.
Chairman, to the nominees, so any attribution to you about some behavior or qualified misbehavior at Wesley Girls Senior High School, KEPCOS, is a wrong attribution?
I'm saying that I haven't been there. It's a wrong attribution.
Thank you. Just wanted it for the record. And Chairman, the Special Prosecutor will be required to work with the Attorney General. We have had, I'm sure you probably have read the Constitutional Review report on Ghana and the operation of the 1992 Constitution. What will you suggest as amendment to the 1992 Constitution which strengthens the hands of the Attorney General to be able to fight corruption?
stated my ideas in my critique. And let me tell you, when I met the president, as I told you, he told me, Martin, I would have wished the Attorney General's office was doing it. But the perception is such that I had to get this thing done, you know. So I think that if the constitutional review report has been far from coming to Parliament, so I think it may have to be reviewed. And there are contending views. There are those who think that the office of the Attorney General must be separated from the Minister of Justice. If Ghana decides in the future that is going to do a constitutional review that will merge the Special Prosecutor's Office with an independent Attorney General's office, well then, the foundation would have been laid for the new independent Attorney General.
I want the nominee's view. What is your view? What do you want done to the 1992 Constitution, if any?
Honestly, I would not want to make a view sitting here. I would want to make a considered view. And that would mean that going back to look at the report that was submitted years ago when I was in the Ministry of Interior, later at the Ministry of Justice. I don't even know whether I have a copy. It would not be fair for me to just off the cuff say that this is what I want. But as I stated, a stranded Attorney General's office would be okay. And I've written an article in 1988 or 99 about it. But sitting here, it will be wrong off the cuff. I have to give a reasoned opinion. If you look at my articles, I try to research them. So if you would pardon me, I wouldn't be able to give you a straightforward answer.
Chairman, the nominee has a position on judgment debt. I want to premise my question on the fact that many of it over the years may have been occasioned by lack of reference to the office of the Attorney General and getting diligent guidance from the Attorney General in respect of contracts that MDAs, ministries, departments and agencies enter into, to the extent that when the sole commissioner concluded his work, you had some very harsh words to describe it. What is your position on judgment debt, and what correctional measures do you recommend for the Republic?
Mr. Chairman, I have said already that the work of the sole commissioner was good, but it's difficult to implement it because of the provisions of the Constitution. That makes it, after the gestation period, if you didn't go on appeal, it becomes a high court judgment. And that is why I think none of the judgment debts is being retrieved, because there's no way of prosecuting it or commencing civil action to retrieve those judgment debts. Because if you go to the High Court, it's equivalent to the judgment of the judge you are going to. You know, so for me, as I think that commissions of inquiry are not a good medium for investigating debts. It is better to use a selective special prosecutor or the general law enforcement agencies to investigate these crimes so that you can prosecute them. That's my candid view.
Chairman, the nominee refers to a selective special prosecutor. If you are approved, you are the only special prosecutor we know.
Yes, but
is it you or a selective? Because the law doesn't anticipate any other special prosecutor.
Chairman, I have argued in my paper that the authority of the Attorney General is such that she can appoint special prosecutors who will be answerable to her to deal with ad hoc cases. I mean, there is no law in the U.S. for the appointment of special prosecutors today. The regulations was formulated by Attorney General Reno, pursuant to the powers of the Attorney General, which are similar to ours. And my argument is that we should encourage ourselves to follow that pattern. My office is being set up by law to deal with a specific offense. Nothing prevents the Attorney General appointing a private legal practitioner to investigate a certain offense in a certain place, either as a consultant or, if you want to call him, or as a special prosecutor, and build a docket. That's what I am encouraging.
Will you make that part of your consultation with the Attorney General to provide for regulations for the effective implementation of this act?
Those regulations are for my act. They will not include authority, because I don't have to dictate to the Attorney General how to use authority. I have been given a mandate. I will try to meet it. If in private conversation the issue arises and I will want to encourage her to look at that point, I may do it. But I don't think that I will want to impose myself on her, having been Attorney General myself, how she must conduct her office.
You made reference to events of 13th July, late President Mills of blessed memory. Are there instances of some conduct with him as president then that you regret?
Please, as I'm telling you, Prof and myself, even after that, continue to be friends. There was just a breach of trust between the two of us, who have been friends for more than 35 years. I'm saying that his beautiful wife, Nadu Mills, knows the relationship. She's alive. I'm saying that Sir Excellency Bibakumense knows the relationship. There is nothing to regret. I was pained that he died so early, so I wrote a tribute about him. I didn't misconduct myself as people are saying. I just spoke plainly, one-on-one, and there were people there.
The American public administration has a strong view, I probably may go into reference to quote, that legal fixes to fighting corruption may not be the sole solution to dealing with it. What other concerted strategies and effort will you join hands with other bodies, including international law enforcement agencies, particularly to deal with aspects of corruption which has to do with money laundering?
Mr. Chairman, an honorable member asked me about the mutual legal assistance. It's one of the methods by which we can collaborate. And normally, agencies such as mine will have collaborative relationship with other international agencies so that we can be able to find out what is going on. I think that it's not prudent to sit in public and tell you all the methods that we can use, because then we forewarn the likely suspects what to expect. But I can assure you that we shall explore all the avenues with the collaboration of any international government or organizations that wants to cooperate with us, to collaborate in such a way that there will be no place to hide for those who indulge in corruption or corruption-related offenses. It's better to speak little on this particular topic than to tell potential suspects what we will do.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. The Honorable Martin Amidu was Attorney General of the Republic of Ghana. What are some inherent weaknesses in the ability of the Attorney General to exercise the kind of will and wit you bring to the Office of Special Prosecutor when you probably were expected same from you in 2011-2012?
It will be self-serving for me to think that my other colleagues have certain weaknesses. Everybody carries his cross, and he will see St. Peter with his own cross. My attitude is my attitude. Others have different attitudes, so we have different attitudes. I don't want, there are legal rules on how attorneys general must behave, and you've given the example of Ashcroft when he was appointed. When Richardson was asked to go, what did he do? Stepped aside. His deputy was asked to go, stepped aside. Brock did it. Brock was sent to court. They found Brock liable. So if there is a consistency and a maintenance of the law, attorney generals will have their independence. But when we are too happy to step into the shoe of the next attorney, the born attorney general, and think we can utilize the office, we prevent it from happening. But that is an individual's choice. It's not a choice you can dictate to anybody. But history shows that in advanced countries, people maintain their stance, and it works. And I think it can work here too.
Honorable Martin Amidu, you come to the office with an onerous responsibility to help the repression of economic crime in Ghana. There is some findings. I should acknowledge the CDD and the IEA in terms of corruption of political parties in Ghana. You yourself, in an earlier interview, alluded to the fact that persons will sit on radio and share how much they have contributed to the success of a presidential candidate or others. The problem elsewhere, particularly in Spain, was to have the confidence to deal with the political elite. All of us sitting here, including members of parliament, we pretend. How we get to parliament? How do we get to parliament? You know what is happening within the internal mechanisms of all our political parties, including the lead political parties. Monies we spend are never justified. Would you have particular interest in dealing with corruption of the political parties in the country, as we all find it unacceptable based on the research that has been found by the CDD and the IEA and other institutions?
Mr. Chairman, we need a lot of political education. And I believe that is why this law has been set up. We need people to understand what is corruption. The powers you've given me, and under the Criminal Offences Act, in fact it has been there already, not you giving me, has corruption by political parties and political office holders there. But nobody has educated people coming to join political parties that you are a public officer. When you become an executive of a political party, you are a public officer, and whatever you do, you are accountable to it. So many of the things that are happening out of ignorance. We will try to educate people, like the example I gave you. I gave you that example because people don't know. You see, so ignorantly they talk. Political office holders should know that they are accountable. We will have to educate them. And I believe that when we do the education, the political parties themselves will begin to tighten the knots. There are other organizations which also have to play their part. I read recently that a court had ordered the Electoral Commission to do certain things, in respect of political parties. And I thought we are getting somewhere. I was amazed that a court could do that. So when I'm approved and the Supreme Court does not declare my appointment null and void, we will try as much as possible to let people see. And when they see it, those people who join political parties just to get the card, thinking it's a liberty, will not have the way when they come to the political parties. For one, political parties will have to pay their office holders, right? They must be paid a salary. It can't be under the table, because as a public service holder, he's entitled to a salary. If it's paid under the table, and then he is going to be prosecuted under Article 179C, how is he going to defend himself? So there are many things we have to educate ourselves, and then it will lead to a change in perception. And we may move forward. I'm not saying that we'll eradicate it. I hope the honorable member understands what 179 I'm talking about sees. Yeah, it will catch so many people, but we have to educate people.
So we expect that a special prosecutor
it's on. It's on. Yeah, all of it. We are getting the technicians to work on it. Okay, it's back now.
Chairman, I'm almost done. I'm left with just 3 more, then just 3 more, and I will bring an end to it. My research and readings in the country, and I do believe you may share the view that corruption is classified in Ghana as petty, grand, and political. Petty, when you have somebody want to influence a headmaster for the daughter or the son to get the best school, or a police officer allowing some person to cross traffic or drive without a driving license. That belongs to what probably has been described by the governance aspect in that area as petty. That exists in Ghana. Or a custom official undervaluing in order to be able to benefit, including the slippages at the port that you mentioned. Then you have the grand corruption, which is embedded in contracts, as you rightly pointed out, of inflated figures, denying value for money for the state and the republic. And then you have the political corruption, which I've alluded to, including political actors and players in that direction, and political parties. I know when the bill came to Parliament, I believe the nominee got the first part of my question. Now, when the bill came to Parliament, there was even an initial attempt to say some matters were small or some acts of corruption were small. But Parliament was unanimous in saying that we should give you the power to deal with all of it, petty, grand, political. Can we have your commitment to fighting corruption, which has permeated every aspect of Ghanaian public life?
Mr. Chairman, we will have to fight corruption that is inimical to the national interest. So there's a type of petty corruption that you've spoken about that has to be nipped in the bud. For instance, during our time, you just had to sit in Boku or Tatale and get hold of the Daily Graphic or the Times, and you see your name with your hall of residence. You may never have crossed Yeji before in your life, and then you come and go to the hall. You know, these days there are things even in headmasters they call protocol. That is not fair for the child who on merit is qualified. So even though you see it as petty, It is depriving an otherwise more qualified person of his chance to rise in life, and the Constitution forbids it. So such, if he's a headmaster or whatever, if you can prove that there is somebody who is more qualified, and yet by inducement he's skewed it, you may want to try to use him to dissuade others from doing it. Of course, grand corruption, those are cases where you will have to deal with. And as I said, it is not the prosecutor, even if he wanted to prosecute every crime, will be unable to. That is why you will see that the prosecutor and his team will have to choose what the community perceives as more serious. And when I mean the community, I'm talking about an imagination of the national interest. So we're going to try to keep according to the standards as much as possible, choosing the crimes to prosecute when there is evidence based on what we think is the supreme national interest.
Chairman, to the nominee, do you share the view that probably public officers' code of conduct and other codes that regulates conduct in the public sector should be reduced to an ethics act to support your work? And will you support other amendments to the criminal amendment code to improve the work of the special prosecutor, and which sections, if any?
Chairman, what I can say is that there was a code of conduct which was supposed to be passed into law when I was Minister for Interior and was chairing the committee. It had been prepared by the Attorney General's office at the time. When I went to the Attorney General's office, it was still pending. I think that you can see that was as an ethics act. I don't know what happened to it, but definitely we need an enacted code of conduct which is enforceable. And if you call it an ethics act, I would have no problem with it.
The asset declaration regime of the country per Article 286 and its practice and the acquisition of property in pseudo names will be an integral part of the work that you will be doing. And there is evidence over the years, not just under the 1993 Republican Constitution, but the other democratic eras. And to paraphrase your word, bribery and corruption have been the most inspiring factor for the military interventions that we have had. What recommendations do you have for an improvement in the asset declaration regime as a tool to help curb corruption in Ghana?
The time I feel that asset declaration was when I left office after January 2012. I don't know whether it's the same form that is being used, but there is the perception. There are two schools of thought. One thing is that the assets declaration should still be kept by the Auditor General without publishing it. There's another school of thought that thinks that the assets declaration should be published at the beginning, at the end of the term. Both have their pros and their cons. There's those who argue that if you did that, you might not get certain people to offer themselves for service because they will not want you to publicize what is supposed to be their self-acquired properties. And then there are laws like this law which allows you, if a suspect has been charged with a corruption offense, to ask the Auditor General to supply you with the fellow's assets declaration form, which means that the assets declaration form, you only get it when the fellow is a subject of investigation. That's another safeguard. So between the two, for me, with little assets, I will be tempted to say, let's publish it. But there are some people who, before they will come to office, have their own bona fide assets, which they will not want to make the subject of public discussion. So you will drive them away from office. So we have to strike a balance. You see, otherwise, there are some people who already have made their wealth and will not come in. But as long as if there is crime, the law enforcement authority has the power to go to court to ask for the declaration to be released, and therefore it helped the investigation. It served the same purpose. So for me, I don't have any particular choice. As on my standards, I would have said publish it, but I also recognize that you will be losing other people just because you say it should. In fact, people have told me that if they ask that the answer should be published, they would rather leave than serve.
Thank you very much. Chairman, if you study the constitutional provision and the Asset Declaration Act, do you share the view that we should expand the list? There are a number of chief executives or managing directors of blue chip companies, so to speak, in Ghana, who earn well, who have other influences probably even weightier than the politicians of MP and ministers of state. Do you share the view that we should add to the list?
I think that it's unfair to think that only the politicians are corrupt. It's most unfair, and therefore subject them to assets declaration, when there are all many public servants who are not even constrained. So if it is expanded to be filled by any public servant who holds a high office position, I think that would be fair enough. You know, but the limitation it has gives the impression that if you come into political office, you are likely to do evil. But if you expand it, then it will check everybody.
I think that the Act covers very wide civil servants. In 2007, when I was head of DVLA, my attention was drawn to the fact that even technical officers, the technical officers of DVLA, are in the law. They are supposed to file their assets. You know, so it is very wide. I don't think the managing directors, chairpersons of boards, they are all covered. Just that politicians are the ones who are sitting here, our faces are in the people's rooms, their TVs. So we are the ones they talk about, but it covers all of them. Yes.
My problem is it implemented to everybody? Or is only the political appointees, ministers, deputy ministers, who feel them? Because if the law is there, then everybody should comply. I don't have the information.
You're right, just that we don't enforce them. So many people do not know. I'm saying, out of 2007, when my attention was drawn to it, I've been chief executive for about 4 years, and I hadn't filed because I didn't know that it covered public servants like me. I thought we were dealing with political appointees. So you're right.
So approve me, and somebody who is supposed to declare has not declared, he will be in trouble.
So we are assured that you will operationalize the provisions on asset declaration. Chairman, on that note, let me assure you and assure the nominee, and in particular the President of the Republic, that if there is any matter to which he can count on our collective unanimity, is matters relating to combating and curbing corruption and white-collar criminality and improving decentralization as a governance strategy, he should never have any doubt. Suffice it to say that I have said that if the office of the special prosecutor focuses on the past only, it only will become an instrument of witch hunt. And if it does not deal with the present, it will lack the credibility and impartiality that is required of the office. And if it does not deal with the future, it does not assure us of a country a commitment to fight extreme poverty and shared prosperity. On that note, we wish you well, subject to other related matters. I thank you and I wish you well. Uncle Martin Hamidu, I wish you well. Thank you.
Very well. I have no questions for you. It's been a very long day. I wish to congratulate you for your ability to withstand this sufficient one. There are a few announcements. One, I'm aware that there's a circular or publication going around that a particular member of the public, a lawyer, said he presented a memo or petition to us. As we speak here, we have not received any such one. So let it be taken that if any such thing came to our notice, we would have investigated it and used it. But as we speak, I'm only hearing about it in the media and then on social media circles. So nothing of that nature came before us. I'll leave it to the chief here to acknowledge some of it. But before that, let me acknowledge the former leader. I think he's gone, he's tired. I've seen Honorable Eric Azuma here. Yes, Honorable Cletus Avoka was here in the morning. And then I saw Nana Ampofu. Nana Ampofu. He is also, is he still there? Right. They have endured the day with us. And the Honorable Chief will acknowledge the others, yes. Very well. I think a former minister also, yes, former local government, Mr. Jimakesi is also here. Yes, we acknowledge you, all the senior members who have come to support the nominee.
Mr. Chairman, we have Madam Cecilia Amankwa Adia, spouse of the nominee. Haga Amidu is a daughter of the, not a child, a daughter of the nominee. And as you have already said, Honorable Dominic Azimbe Azuma, former Member of Parliament for Garu, has been here. Honorable Kretus Avoka, former leader of the House and a former Member of Parliament for Zebila. And Nana Ejiampo, for a former member of the Council of State and a former chairman of the National Lands Commission. We have Mrs. Gifty Brown Gazy, Mr. Kofi Boachi Yadom. Yeah. The designations have not been given, so I'm just mentioning the names. Samuel Brian Boabing, Mr. Isaac Kwabna Mensa, Mrs. Rosemary Kwam, Mr. Alex Kusi, Mr. Isaac Ajiman Badu, Mr. Jakwa Kwesi Amate, and Ms. Fauzia Zachary. That's all the list I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Nominee. Thank you for attending upon the committee to answer questions. And at this stage, you say you are discharged. You hear from us.
Mr. Chairman, may I take the opportunity to thank members of the committee for bearing with me. I just want to say that I have no animosity or personal problems with the Honorable Abrakwa. I just want to assure him. The problem with conflict is that when you don't sit face to face to talk and you escalate it through correspondence, you know, it escalates. I believe that if we had sat down to speak, this matter would not even come here, let alone for it to be as if I'm trying to cast aspersions on his integrity and all that. So I just want to assure him that I don't have anything personal against him. It is conflict creates perceptions. And when you sit around the table and talk, that's the only way to resolve conflict. But when you don't do it through dialogue, it tends to escalate. And I believe that's what has happened. So be assured that I have nothing personal against you.
Very well, thank you. You are discharged.